my dears. Now, based on the title, you're probably thinking to yourself, does she mean how autism affects views of race, or how race affects autism? And the answer is yes. We're gonna do all the things. So, get ready, friends. I also just want to take a quick second before we begin to acknowledge that I am a white person talking about racial issues. Y'all are welcome to call me out and or add anything to the conversation if I miss anything. This should be the start of a discussion, not the end of it. Cool. I also want to give a quick content warning. We will be talking about police brutality and medical gaslighting, just a smidge. So, first, we are going to talk about how race is a social construct, which you probably know at this point. The idea of race was created, for lack of a better word, to prove that one person is better than another person, which is so false, but humans are insecure beings, so we do this a lot. For example, classism, homophobia, ableism, sexism. I could go on. And racism in history is actually quite interesting because there was a time in the US when Irish people weren't considered white, and now that has very much changed. And as we've discussed in many of my other videos, autistic people struggle with social constructs, and studies have proven time and time again that we are less likely to discriminate than neurotypical people. But people in the autism community have started to equate racism with ableism and are saying that their experiences as a white disabled person are the same as those of a BBIM non-disabled person. There's also another thing where people are saying that calling them racist is being ableist. And y'all, you cannot compare different kinds of oppression, first of all. You can understand the experience of being oppressed, of course. You can sympathize with other people who are oppressed, of course, but you do not understand their specific experience of being oppressed. Yes, all types of oppression are in a way connected, but they are not the same. Second of all, autistic people can still be racist. Our intentions could always be good, but intentions do not always equal impact. You can be a well-meaning missionary going to Africa to teach them about Christianity, but that doesn't mean that what you're doing isn't incredibly problematic and will likely have negative effects. If you want to learn more about autism and cultural appropriation and how intention does not equal impact, check out my video in the card above. Also, yes, autistic people may be statistically less likely to discriminate than non-autistics, but we are still part of a system, and we still internalize part of that system. If you've ever experienced internalized ableism, then you've experienced internalized racism. The system is inherently racist, so you too are inherently racist. It doesn't mean that you can't also learn to be actively anti-racist, but you still live within a system, so it affects how you experience the world. And discrimination is just one part of racism, so even if you magically don't discriminate, you can still be racist. So if somebody tells you that what you said was racist, don't say that they're being ableist in saying that. Own up to the impact your words or action had on the other person. Let's put this into a scenario. Sunny is queer and non-disabled, while Rose is straight and disabled. Rose makes a joke about how lesbians move in together after the first date. Sunny responds with a joke calling Rose the R slur. Rose says, "Hey, that's ableist." And Sunny says, "Well, what you said was homophobic." What Sunny said was ableist, and what Rose said in some settings isn't considered homophobic, but to Sunny it felt that way. And saying, "I can't be ableist, I'm queer," or "I can't be homophobic, I'm disabled," would make no sense in that scenario, or any scenario. Either way, people felt hurt, so now we can learn and make change going forwards from here. It's as simple as that. You cannot trade one oppression for another because each oppressed identity makes you experience the world differently than other oppressed identities. Cool? Cool. Also, while we're on the topic of this, I want to uplift a post from @fidgetsandfries on Instagram, which you can find them in the description below, specifically talking about this issue in the case of Elijah McClain. After he was killed, people united asking for justice, saying that he was autistic, and McClain's family never said anything about him being autistic. Other people simply assigned that identity to him. And he wasn't targeted because he was autistic. He was targeted because he was black. In police brutality cases, there is a significant overlap between disability and race, which we are going to talk about in a bit, but he would have been just as likely to be killed if he were a neurotypical or abled black person. The world sees disabilities as second to race when it comes to discrimination, and the idea that people needed to assign him a disability in order to humanize him so that they'd be willing to fight for him is hugely problematic. Not only is disability assignment of BBIM people often used to justify stereotypes and uphold white supremacy, but also we should be outraged about this not because he's disabled and black, but because he was wrongly killed by a system that lets people get away with murdering people. And to clarify, I'm not saying we're all one race, the human race, so let's all fight for each other, because colorblind ideals make it seem like we're all equal, and in the system we're in right now, that is anything but the truth. What I'm saying is that we shouldn't feel the need to assign some extra marker to somebody to make ourselves sufficiently upset about the fact that they were wrongly killed. We should just be upset that they were wrongly killed. Period, end of story. Now we'll get back to police brutality in a short bit, but first let's talk about diagnostic privilege. First of all, many cultures don't actually believe in autism. They think that autistic people are just acting weird, or in some cultures are possessed by a demon. So even having somebody recognize, something may be different with my child, let me take them to the doctor, can be difficult in many cultures. And the fact that pretty much the only media portrayals of autism that we see are cishet teenage white boys who like trains doesn't help that. And once people do get to a doctor's office, in the majority of cases, a white person will leave with an ADHD and autism diagnosis. A BBIM person with the exact same symptom profile will leave with a diagnosis of a behavioral disorder. And these things are used as justification for arrests and keeping people wrongly incarcerated. And neurodivergency often comes hand in hand with chronic illness and other mental illnesses, and we all know at this point that the medical system is incredibly skewed against non-white people with diagnoses, medications, other treatments, and the fact that medical care as a whole is expensive, and specifically a lot of medical care for autism isn't covered by insurance, and due to our skewed system, people of color are statistically less likely to be able to afford it. Now, there have also been some great discussions online, and I'm sorry that I cannot find where I took these ideas from, shout out to whoever they are from, about how traditional mental health practices tell you to be authentic and honest and let down your guard. But how can you expect somebody to be authentic and honest and let down their guard and put their trust into the very systems that force them to hide their true selves for safety? Telling somebody to live authentically and unmask, and then punish them for living authentically and unmasking, makes mental health resources feel a good deal like a trap. And back to police brutality, the autism community, myself included, we talk a lot about the importance of unmasking, being able to openly stim and speak differently and not make eye contact and to act authentically autistic. But that can put people of color in serious danger. Society sees these behaviors as erratic and odd and threatening and suspicious, even sometimes dangerous. And people assume that somebody's poor social skills are them being on drugs or being armed or hiding something or something else. And I don't know if you've ever tried to touch an autistic person mid-meltdown, but they will very likely slap you, and police don't take that lightly. 50% of people killed by the police every year have some sort of disability and or mental illness. 50%. So we're telling people to unmask and to be openly themselves in a system where doing that will very likely cost them their lives. And this is where oppressions are connected. No, racism is not ableism. But by fighting for one cause, we're fighting for them all. Because we can't fight ableism without fighting racism and white supremacy. We can't fight racism without fighting capitalism. And it goes on and on. They're all interconnected. So what can we do? Well, first of all, speak out and learn. I mean, I didn't know half of this until last summer, and that's a problem. And I will admit that me not looking into it is a bit of that problem, but still. This kind of stuff isn't taught in a lot of places. Also, if you have any money to spare, use it to fight for these causes. If you have any energy to spare, use that to go to marches and work to fight for these causes. If you don't have either of those, that's okay too. Take some time to learn things and to uplift other creators who are educating, and you don't need to prove to the world that you're doing it. Just do it. And this will probably be my most unpopular opinion, because it has been for years, but put yourself first. Yes, we should all fight for each other. Yes, we should all work together. But if going to marches makes you melt down and takes you out of commission for a week, don't go. If watching all the footage about a certain event gives you panic attacks, don't watch it. You can't fight for justice if you are melting down or having panic attacks or stress migraines or any of the above. You simply can't pour from an empty cup, and you can't fight for every single cause. Now, I'll make a video at some point about the sheer amount of ableism that is performative activism. It's a whole mess, but Especially with social media, there's this idea that you have to repost every colorful infographic. You have to be on top of every social justice movement. You simply can't do that. It's not human. You need to live a life, especially if you're neurodivergent or disabled. It's just too much to handle. If everybody works hard on being an activist all the time so that they're burnt out, nothing is going to get done. But if every single person makes a difference in their own little corner of the world, in the best way that they possibly can, that's enough, and it'll make enough change. So do what you can, don't be too hard on yourself. Every person's version of giving their all will look different. So if you're doing your best and being open to learning and changing and educating and making change in your own way in your own little pocket of the universe, you're doing enough. You are. As always, thank you for listening. Thank you for learning. Remember, your story isn't over. It has only just begun. Please take care of each other. Be kind. And I look forward to seeing you in the next one.